Welcome to the Method! Today we have a spooky chat with Kristy Sumner. Kristy is part of the Soul Sisters Paranormal, investigating paranormal activity all over America. We have a candid chat about some of the spookiest moments she's experienced, as well as what it's like to deal with the haters and to deal with other paranormal investigators. Enjoy.
The method, we're eating, we're sleeping, we're fight. The method, for marriage or divorce or one night. Well, I know you probably think that it sounds pretty dumb, but the methods you use to get shit done. If you're chatting up a lover, you're going on a run, then it might be wise to heed the words of a pro with a little bit of help. Who knows, to get some happiness out of your woes, to get promoted to CEO of a happy mind inside your head. You don't want to wake up dead, thinking why'd you work so hard for things that hardly work for you. The method works.
We're here with Kristy, and she's a paranormal investigator. Why don't you sort of give us a quick rundown of how you started investigating the paranormal?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Kristy Sumner, and I'm the founder of Soul Sisters Paranormal. And we're an all-female group made up of myself, my twin sister, my younger sister, and 2 female family friends. And it actually started for us as a girls' weekend. We all live in different parts of the country, so we would routinely get together and have girls' weekends in different parts of the country. And my mother, who's originally from Glendale, West Virginia, has a family friend who sits on the board of the West Virginia State Penitentiary, which is one of the most haunted locations in the United States. And so he said, why don't y'all come up one weekend, stay the night at the prison, and see what you find. And so we always said to ourselves, if we had the opportunity to go on a paranormal investigation, we would jump on it. So we did. And we had a very rudimentary investigation that night, just some digital cameras, a couple of night vision video cameras, and a couple of voice recorders. And we left that experience with such compelling evidence that we decided to formalize our group, and we came up with our name and our logo and our trademark, and have just been investigating ever since. That was in 2013.
So what sparked your interest in the first place? Like, were you always sort of interested in the paranormal, and did you already believe it before this situation in the prison?
We did. We had actually watched, we grew up watching the paranormal shows on TV, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures and such. And we always said to ourselves, like I said, if we get the opportunity to go, we would go, because what we were seeing on mainstream media was, there were gaps, what we considered gaps in the investigations. Like, why didn't they ask these questions? Why didn't they spend more time here? We would like to know more about the history of these locations. And so we told ourselves, if we could do this, then we're going to try to essentially fill in the gaps that we thought was missing. And so we just decided to have the investigation style of doing extensive research on the locations, using that research, that historical research, to guide our investigations. And then we would put together a video of that with any compelling paranormal evidence that we found. And so that's kind of what we've done. It's definitely grown. It's evolved from that first investigation to what I think is a pretty cool investigation style. Like I said, we do a lot of research beforehand. In doing the videos, we do a lot of historical research and so on. So that was kind of like how what really drove us to do this, visiting the historic locations, and then coupling that with any paranormal evidence that we found.
So when you visited the prison for the first time, was that your first ever experience, or had you had experiences before that made you sort of believe?
We've had small experiences. I went on large scale. For example, my parents built a new house in 1995, and it had some property with it. And on the property, we knew that a woman had died in the house that was on the property previously. And so after my parents built their house, there's a small parlor that has a piano in it. And my dad can, tinker around on the piano a little bit. And every time he would play Amazing Grace, the room would fill up with a mist and this floral scent. And it was only when he played that that song. And so that was a little interesting. So we had those type of experiences, every now and then a music box would turn on, especially after my grandmother passed, but nothing really full scale, if you will. Nothing that would, I guess would follow us through days or months or weeks, just little occurrences. But after the investigation at the prison, that night we were experiencing doors slamming, footsteps running out of us in the darkness, male voices when we know there was no males in the area. And so that, again, was extremely compelling to us. And we just decided that this is what we wanted to do.
So the penitentiary was abandoned when you went in there, or disused?
Well, it's closed. It was closed in 1995, but there's a board that operates it now, and they allow people to go in to do things like have events or, what we call paranormal conventions. People can go and investigate it. People can take day tours, like historical tours. So they have different phases of operation, and we were just lucky enough to get in and actually spend the night there. And
when you're doing it, is it not just incredibly frightening and there's a huge adrenaline rush? Part of it for you must be part investigation, but part sort of thrill.
It is, especially when we first started, there is an adrenaline rush in every one that we do, especially when you hear something unexplainable or you see something unexplainable. For us, it really is about the research. So we're not a team of girls that will run out screaming. I mean, we've never run out of a location. We've never screamed in a location. I mean, we've had some oh shit moments, like what was that? But we turn and go towards it. But, it's extremely nerve-wracking sometimes when you're standing there and something slaps the wall beside you, or, you're walking down this corridor and you see a shadow figure dart in front of you. So we have those startling moments, but for us, it's part of what we do. And it's something that we expect. You just don't know when it's going to happen, but you expect it to happen. And for us, that's the thrill of doing this.
Yeah, and who are you doing it for specifically? So obviously you're doing it for yourselves in the group, but are you commissioned by the owner of a building, or how does it work?
So we have two types of investigations. The first one is what I will call commercial investigations. So we go to these larger places, these well-known places like the Villisca Ax Murder House or the Lizzie Borden House or the West Virginia State Penitentiary. And we investigate those locations simply to build our portfolio and to really hone our investigation style and use new techniques and such. And we do a lot of collaborations with other paranormal groups at those locations. So that's the commercial side. And then we have what we do is private investigations. So anybody with a house or a business that they feel has some sort of paranormal activity, they'll call us in and we will go in and do an extensive research and investigation into that. And we go in with a healthy skepticism, if you will, because we do think that there's some instances where it's environmental, street lights or dogs barking or kids playing or something like that we can explain. So we go in and look for those first. And then when we rule all of those environmental factors out, then we will say this is compelling and unexplainable to us. So to answer your question, we've got those two types of investigations. So for the commercial side, those are the ones that are really highlighted in our videos. And we really want to highlight the history of the location first, because to us, that's paramount. We feel that if we can drive tourism dollars toward those locations or help preserve them in some way, then that is our real job in this. And then secondary comes the paranormal. So if we can marry the paranormal with our historical research, that's just a bonus. So we'll put together that video, release it to our audience, again, and just kind of educating them on different locations that they may have heard of or don't know all the facts surrounding.
So to give us a better understanding of what it actually entails, could you walk us through what your typical investigation, the different stages of it? You turn it to a location and it's thought to be haunted. What are the steps, and how does it play out, on an average basis?
Okay, yeah. For us, what we do is we actually go to the location either the day before or the day of our nighttime investigation. And we will walk through and do an extensive day tour because we want to get a feel for the location before we're in there in the dark. And during that time, we take copious notes on every environmental factor that we can think of. So airplane traffic, train traffic, car headlights, like I said, dogs in the neighborhood, kids in the neighborhood, anything that could influence us or influence the environment while we're there. So when we go back and listen and watch all of our audio and video footage that we capture, if we hear something like that, we can rule it out as not being paranormal. So we'll do that, and then we'll go in the night of the investigation and set up what I call stationary equipment. So we'll take night vision video cameras or voice recorders, and we'll leave them in different areas of the location. So, for example, a cell block or an auditorium or a cafeteria if we're in a prison. And so we'll let those run all by themselves all night. So even if we're not in the area conducting question sessions, those things are still running in that area. So after we set up all of that equipment, we actually start taking our handheld equipment out, and we will go just start asking questions in various locations around the campus. And, it ranges from anything from, the historical, we try to actually narrow it down to specific individuals that were there, or just broad overall questions such as what was it like to be in a prison, or, were you housed in a cell? So those type of questions that really drive our investigation. And then after the investigation, we collect all of the audio and video footage, and we sit and we watch all of the audio, video footage that we capture, and we listen to all of the audio footage that we captured. And then when we find anything that we can't explain, we'll cross-reference everything to make sure it's not us. And then if we find stuff that we can't explain, then we'll put that in our video and call it unexplainable evidence.
So how often do you find something that you can't explain? Is it a regular occurrence when you go to one of these locations?
We've been very fortunate. We've had a really good track record of finding things that we can't explain. For example, obviously there's only females on the team, so we're Soul Sisters. And when we go to a location and we capture a male's voice or we capture a child's voice, I can automatically say that is not us. I can't explain that. We have no children on any of these investigations, and every now and then we'll take a male guest investigator, but most of the time it's just us. So I can rule out that there's a male. So that's extremely unexplainable. We've been very fortunate to capture shadow figures in a couple of the prisons that we've gone to, as well as Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. We caught a really cool shadow figure there. So, for us, we've been very fortunate. And I think it's because we are a group of all females. We don't go in with a lot of bravado. We don't go in with chest thumping or try to provoke or say, if I'm not going to believe you're here until you punch me. We don't do that. Really go in with a sense of empathy, and we really want to legitimately tell the story of the location and any of the paranormal claims that are there.
So do you think your investigation style has allowed you to be more successful in having these experiences?
I think so. There are some groups that are successful as well. And then, there are some groups that'll contact me and say, we went to this location and we didn't catch a thing. And, for me, even if we go to a location and we don't capture anything, we'll still put together a video because I feel the history is the driving force behind what we're doing. So when I talk to those investigators that didn't catch anything, it really is kind of essentially not your night in that respect. But we, like I said before, we listen to everything. I say a lot of investigators will hear, but not a lot of them will listen. And so when I say we listen to every piece of audio footage that we capture, I'm seriously listening to about 200 hours of audio per location and watching that much in video footage as well. So we really take our time and analyze everything that we captured. And I think that's the reason that we've been so successful, is because we do dedicate that time to conducting that analysis of what we've captured.
Is there quite a big community of people that investigate the paranormal?
There really is. And once you get into this and delve into it more, the more people that you find that are involved in what we call the paranormal community. And it's interesting because it really does run the gamut. You have all male teams, you have other all female teams, you have co-ed teams, and we all have our different styles and unique investigation methods. We use different types of tools during our investigations. But once you really delve into it, there's numerous groups around the country that actually actually do this actually around the world. I mean, I've met several from the UK. I've met a couple from Australia, New Zealand. So it really is a worldwide community. But the problem is, we are a subculture. So the mainstream really does see us still as a subculture. And so what we're trying to do with Soul Sisters Paranormal is bring a little bit of a professionalism to this subculture. So when people talk to us, they can say, okay, you're not kooks, you seem like a normal person. And so we can talk intelligently about our experiences. And in some cases, other groups may not be able to do that as eloquently as we do. And that's not to disparage other groups, believe me, that's not what I'm trying to do. But I'm just saying for us, we're very in tune to our image and to our professional brand. And we do that because we are already fighting the stereotype that we're women and also the stereotype that we're in this subculture.
Yeah, and on the subject of sort of skeptics and skepticism, I'm sure that's a daily occurrence in your line of work.
It is. You tell somebody that you're a paranormal investigator and they either look at you like you have 5 heads or they want to tell you their ghost story. So it really kind of, it doesn't really, those are the two extremes. But like I said, once we really start talking to people about it and what we do, they really do have an open mind about it. And honestly, it really started with my family. The reason we started actually producing our videos is because my parents and my aunts and uncles and such were saying, what do y'all experience when you're there? I mean, what does it look like? What does it feel like? So we just really started to put together all of that historical research and put it together so people can actually essentially follow along with us in what we do. And it also highlights, I can tell you that there are no men here. There are no children here. There are no other influences that are causing the things that we're finding. And so to combat that skepticism, I say, watch our video. If just talk to me and I'll tell you, this is what we can explain. Now, if somebody wants to come to me and say, oh, I can explain that, then I would absolutely love to have a dialogue with them because at the moment I couldn't. So with regard to skeptics, I don't try to convince them that I'm right. I don't try to convince them that a place is haunted because it'd be like me trying to convince them that my religion is correct. I'm not going to do that. What I'm doing is putting together a case and throwing some evidence in there to try to build that case, and they can choose to believe it or not. And that's kind of where we leave it.
And within all the people who are exploring the paranormal, is there sort of varying levels of skepticism between different groups? So I think a lot of people who maybe haven't given it much thought would just assume, right, you're a paranormal investigator, you believe anything's possible, and therefore I'm not going to believe in you. Or some people are coming at it from a slightly more skeptical point of view and they just want to prove some things, and maybe others believe that everybody turns into a ghost or this, that, and the other. So does it vary between groups?
It really does. It varies between groups and it varies between, just the general public. There are some people out there that I can show them a picture of a napkin and they'll see their grandmother in it. And so that's the, from that. And then others will look at it and say, that's just a napkin. So it does run that gamut. And, the trick for us is really just kind of finding that happy medium. And like I said, when I talk to people about it, I'll also tell them the cases that we debunked. We go into locations and there's numerous times where we'll find things that aren't paranormal. For example, we went into a business that the owner said, I'm completely convinced that there's a ghost in here. It keeps turning off our night vision video cameras. And, I think that it's haunted and I want you to come in and take a look. And so for us, we went in and we set up our own night vision video cameras. We conducted an investigation and we weren't really finding anything. We weren't really getting any feelings or any readings on our equipment. So we left those night vision video cameras to run overnight. We all left. And the next morning I said, did anything influence your night vision video cameras? And he says, yes. I said, okay, give me the times. So he gave me the times. And so I went and looked at our night vision video cameras. And what I was finding was there was the way the business was positioned. It has a glass storefront and it's right on an intersection on a highway. So as cars were turning left, their headlights were sweeping through the glass front and bouncing off of a mirror. And every time it did that, it would turn the night vision to day vision, essentially turn it off. So it happens pretty quickly. And so I told him, I said, just either move the mirror or move the night vision video camera to a different angle. And he did, and their paranormal activity stopped. So for us, we do try to go in and methodically look at different things that could be causing these paranormal claims. And then absent that, we'll call it unexplainable.
I think it's great that you're going at it from an angle of almost being like skeptical yourself. I think if you're talking to us about it now, it makes me feel like I could believe it easier because I know that you're putting in the effort to try and debunk it yourself, or to try and really prove that it has to be something that's completely unexplainable, and you're not just sort of automatically assuming that, this is definitely paranormal. You're ticking every box in terms of trying to prove that it's not first, and then if it's left over, that's what you think is.
And that's what we really honestly strive to do in all of our investigations. We all come from a research background, academic background. There's two of us that have PhDs on the team, two of us that have JDs, which are doctorates in law, and then one that has a master's degree. So we do try to come at it with a very scientific and methodical research-based approach. And, when we find things like when I'm listening to a piece of audio or a voice recorder or watching something, if I hear something, I'll clip that piece of audio and I'll label it like bedroom 1, and I won't say anything. And then I'll send it to the team, and then I'll just say, "Do y'all hear anything here?" And then they each answer me individually, because I feel that we're a microcosm of our audience. So if we can't come to a consensus about what it is, then I'm not gonna put that forward as evidence. And then another thing that we do, we always wear body cameras at each of the locations that we visit. Important because I want a timestamp of where everybody is on the campus, because there are times we'll go off by ourselves or in groups of 2. And so if we hear a door slam, I can say, oh, well, that was Jenny and Cara in this room, because they're shutting a door at the same time this voice recorder over here in this room is capturing it. So we're very conscious of trying to really account for our movements the entire time we're in an investigation.
I'm interested to sort of hear your thoughts, because a lot of what the average person sees in terms of paranormal is like Hollywood representations of what, demons and people flying around rooms and all stuff like that. So I'm interested from your experience, like what actually is the paranormal and what is it actually capable of?
Okay. To answer your first question, yes. What we find is that when we're speaking to somebody who really isn't in the community or really knows what a paranormal investigator does, their entire concept of what a paranormal investigation is based on Hollywood. It's based on things like Ghostbusters, based on things like Paranormal Activity, those movies, and then the TV shows like I mentioned, Ghost Hunters and Adventurers and such. And media has done a really good job of highlighting that there are paranormal investigators out there, but it's a detriment to us because it really doesn't highlight what we actually do. Our instant gratification type of society wants to know immediately what you found and immediately wants your video. So if I say, okay, we just came back from the Lizzie Borden house, the next day I'm getting questions, where's your video? We want to know what you found. But for us, it's usually about a 3 to 4 week process, maybe even longer, to produce what we feel is a quality video. So it's not wrapped up in an hour television show like you see on TV. And then to answer your second question, what I feel that paranormal is, for us anyway, we go in with the mindset that what we're trying to communicate with was actually a human point in time. And we go to ask the type of question. So we don't seek out dark energies. And so for that reason, I don't think we encounter it a lot. We've done it a couple of times, but not a lot. So I believe that, like I said, they were human at some point. So they're either remaining here where we can contact them for a variety of reasons. One is that they do have unfinished business. Like, there's something that they're still waiting to do, or something that they're waiting for before they ascend to whatever's next. We'll call it heaven or the next realm. And an example of that is about 6 years ago, I had a very vivid dream that my granddaddy, who passed in 1986, he came to me in this dream and he said, I'm waiting for your Nana, who's my grandmother. I'm waiting for your Nana, and you're going to be getting a call soon. And about 2 weeks after that, my Nana was in an accident and she never really recovered. She was in hospice for about 4 weeks. So on the past, I told, and with permission from my family, I told my sister, I said, I know where she's going. She's going to go meet granddaddy in this room that was highlighted in the dream. So we took all of our equipment to that house, to the room, and the power had been turned off because she was in hospice for so long. And so we took our equipment, and through some of the questions we were asking, I was able to determine that Nana and granddaddy met up and that they were moving on to whatever's next. And we validated that by going back a week later and asking the exact same questions, and we got no response on any of our equipment. So that is an example of what I feel was unfinished business. So granddaddy was there and then he moved on. Another reason I believe is that for some reason they're stuck. They know they have to go somewhere, but they don't know how to get there. And for an example of that, we were investigating at Hales Bar Dam, which is a dam in Tennessee. And there's a series of tunnels that run underneath that dam. And during the 1960s, some kids were killed inside one of the tunnels. And so when we were investigating, one of the investigators asked, why are you still here? And we got a child's voice saying, I'm stuck. And so for me, that was heartbreaking, but kind of validates the fact that he knows he's dead, but he can't go on for some reason because he's stuck. And then the third one is, I believe that some remain because they're scared of what comes next, either retribution for what they've done in this life, or they're just more comfortable where they're located and just don't want to move on. And for an example of that, we were at the West Virginia State Penitentiary, and we were communicating with what I believe is the spirit, a guy by the name of Red Snyder, who was a murderer. He was in prison for murder, and he actually ended up getting murdered in the jail. And so he was a big time, guy in the jail. He was the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood, and he was the head of all the gangs and everything. So in my mind, I think he wants to stay in the jail because he doesn't want to move on to whatever's next, because he's fearing what his punishment will be in the afterlife. So for me, those are the three reasons why I believe we're communicating with the spirits that we are communicating with.
I think a lot of people would find it, or would be skeptical to this, because to believe in the paranormal, there seems to also have to believe in maybe like an afterlife, which might not conform to their religious views if they have any, or their sensibility, or believe in sort of like a power of the soul. And it seems like there's a lot of things wrapped up together that don't have a lot of answers, and you can see why people struggle to take that on.
Oh, absolutely. And, I have these discussions on a daily basis with people. For me, the first and foremost is, we're made up of energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed. So in my mind, we're going somewhere. And then the second, if you were to go through life and not believe in something after this, that you just essentially stop being after you're dead, I would be petrified of dying. So I believe that most people have some concept that their essence is going to survive after this. Now, depending on your religious beliefs or your non-religious beliefs, wherever that is up to you and for you to decide. For me, I'm a Christian. I do believe in God. And for what I'm doing, I believe that has strengthened my faith in my beliefs. We have to draw from references that we have in history. Throughout history, people have believed in ghosts. It's not just a modern phenomena. Look at Shakespeare. He was writing about ghosts in Hamlet. And even the Bible mentioned ghosts. So that the disciples had to have some type of frame of reference that these things existed. So for me, it's something that we're researching to enhance that knowledge base. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think we'll ever come up with answers. And that's why I will never call myself a paranormal expert. And I don't think that such a thing exists. I can say that I have more experience. I can say that I've gone to different places and found compelling evidence, but I'll never call myself an expert, because I don't think that's possible, because these are all just theories that we're all working with. If you were to ask another guest why they think a spirit's here, they can give you a completely different answer. And that's fine, because we're all dealing with theories. But for me, when I try to talk to skeptics or cynics or anything like that, I just say, this is what I believe, and this is how I'm framing it. And these are the compelling pieces of evidence that I've found that I can't explain when I account for everything else. And so again, you can either believe that or you don't have to believe that. That's up for you to decide.
Do you think that a lot of people who maybe don't believe it, but do have experiences, but they just rationalize it as something else?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've talked to several people who said, I think I've got something happening in my house. This picture fell off, but it could have been the wind. So there's different things like that, and they do try to rationalize it, and that's great, because if we can come up with some type of environmental factor that's causing it, then that's fine. I think a lot of people don't talk about their experiences because they don't want to be perceived as crazy. I'll admit, when we first started doing this, it was kind of like a hushed thing. Even my family was like, what are y'all doing? But now my family is our biggest fans. They're constantly, where are you going next? What's the next picture? When's the next video coming out? Because, they know we do come from that scientific background, and they know that we are going to extensively research, and we're not going to put out something that's going to essentially damage our credibility as a paranormal investigator and as a person. So, like I said, for us, it really is something that we're very free to talk openly about because of the things that we've experienced. But for other people, it may not be that way. They just have one or two experiences, and they just don't want people to think that they're crazy.
Who had the dream about your granddad?
I did.
You did. It reminded me of something that happened with my family, because my nana, whose son died, so my mum's brother died a while ago now. But my nana always, every week, she'll sort of sit down and speak to him. And this one week, I think it was about a year ago, he said to him, could you, because my mum was having a bit of a difficult time, so she said to him when she was talking to him, can you go and visit Denise and make sure she's okay? And then that same night, she had a dream about him, and they had like a conversation in her dream. So she's kind of had quite a few different experiences like that she's told me about, which it definitely adds some sort of, I do believe that there might, there's something there in terms of spirituality, just based on, experiences like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely, and that's a great example, of things that do happen. I think people are more in tuned in a dream state, because that's the most vulnerable. You're not influenced by light and sound and the daily activities of life. You're really in that state where you're kind of vulnerable and more open to receiving things like that. So it's very common for people to have dreams of loved ones that have passed and actually have a conscious conversation with them. And I do believe that for a lot of people, that is their paranormal experience. Like for us, it's just we have those, and then we also have the things that the location onto.
I guess it does come down a lot to how each individual person frames it as well, because someone who maybe, is complete, like, I definitely don't believe in anything like this, they're all just going to rationalize it and turn it into something else. Whereas someone who's maybe a bit more open-minded, a bit more spiritual, has a different sort of outlook, they're going to frame it in, again, a different way. So I imagine people have had, a lot of different experiences that they've just put into different categories of their own.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, each person, I mean, the theories of the afterlife are going to vary as there are many people, because each one of us is going to have some different concept or view of what's going to happen next. And again, that's up to each individual person to believe and to rationalize on their own. Like I said, for what we're doing, some of the that we've found, to me, is just extremely compelling. That for some reason we are able to communicate with these spirits, whether it be that, like I said before, the reasons that I mentioned before, I just feel that they're closer to the veil, if you will, between this and whatever comes next.
And do you think it's only humans that can experience this, or do you think that other animals are extended into this?
I do believe that animals are aware or in tune. I think sometimes they may be more so. An example of that is, we have a large amount of golden retrievers. We've always had 4 or 5 of them. And, a couple of years ago, one of our golden retrievers just died unexpectedly. She had a brain aneurysm and just died unexpectedly. And, I think that my other dog, one of the other dogs, knew what was coming, because the day of, because she passed during the night, the day of, he was right there with her, leave her side, just completely, in tune with her. So I think he experienced something. And, there are several investigators that I know that do take animals with them into locations and to see if they can sense anything, or give a quote unquote hit on something that they perceive as being there. There's countless stories of people that have dogs that will just stare off into a corner or something. So yeah, I think that animals are in tune. They just don't really know how to tell us what they're seeing or feeling.
It is a thing actually in the just kind of reminded me, but in a lot of the movies there is a dog that will just bark at a blank space, and then it'll turn out that that's where the ghost is.
Exactly. And, you do see that in Hollywood, just kind of one of those things that has just kind of been passed down through Hollywood and media and all of that. And I do think there's something to it. Animals, I think, are very empathic. I think, especially for dogs, cats are kind of like, they're emotionless, but dogs are awesome in the fact that they're in tune with humans and things that are going on.
So what do you think sort of makes a particular location haunted, and why do you think that it kind of always seems to be that it's a location that you'd almost expect, like a mental asylum or an old abandoned prison? It kind of almost seems obvious in a way. And do you think there's a reason that those locations are particularly susceptible to it?
For me personally, I think those types of institutions are active because of the things that happened in the walls when it was in operation. So, for example, the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, it was an asylum in West Virginia that was built in 1864 and it until 1994. And it was designed to only house 250 patients. Time of its closing, there were over 2,000 patients in the walls, and they were being subjected to things like lobotomies and shock treatments and alternative forms of therapy to try to quote unquote correct them. And so those walls throughout the century that it was open saw all of that. And I think that negative energy that really, for lack of a better term, just emotionless energy kind of permeated there. And so I think that really drives a lot of the paranormal activity there. Same thing with prisons. You don't send good people to prison. So there's really not a positive days in a prison or a jail. So I think that negative energy really just kind of permeates and it allows paranormal, allows the entity that we're speaking with, communicating with, to really kind of feed off of that, if that makes sense.
For sure. Have you ever felt, it's probably a question that you get all the time, but have you ever felt like you were in danger in any investigation?
Not so much from the paranormal. There have been times when I've felt in danger from humans. Sometimes they scare me more than ghosts, but not so much from the paranormal. When we go into a location, we really set boundaries, if you will. When we go in and start communicating, like we will say, you are not allowed to touch us unless we say you are not allowed to hurt us in any way. You cannot do any harm to us, and you can't leave with us. And I think that does a lot to kind of minimize any of physical altercations. Like, for example, we haven't been scratched or bit or anything like that. Now, I will say there'll be times when I'll say, if you're here, can you tug my pant leg, or can you touch my hair or something like that? And we've had responses like that where we feel that. But as far as physically being hurt, no. There have been some instances, especially at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, there's a location that is said to be inhabited by a demon. And so for us, because we're not looking for that and we really don't want to engage with that, we put a night vision video cam or a voice recorder in that room, and we just left it run by itself. And we just said, this is your space. If you're here, you can talk into the voice recorder and we'll listen to you. But otherwise, there's other places on the campus where we'll go and investigate. So we really don't have to deal with that full scale. If there was something like that we would encounter at a location, again, it'd be one of those things where we'll say, we acknowledge that this is your space and we're backing out of it.
So psychologically, how are you able to sort of just stay calm in those moments? And do you think that you're just naturally very strong-minded, or have you sort of, put practice in?
Well, I will say that every member on the team is extremely strong-willed. We're a very strong group of females. And, like I said, for us, it really is about finding that evidence, finding something that's unexplainable. For example, when we were at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, we were actually on a collaboration with Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. She's another investigator. And so we're in the auditorium, or the gymnasium. So we have several pieces of electronic equipment that have light indicators on them. So we set those up in the middle of the gym along with a glow-in-the-dark balloon. And so everything else was completely dark. So we stepped back I'd say about 15, 20 feet. So we're filming the semicircle. And Miranda was holding a tool called an SLS camera. And in very general terms, what it does is it's a camera connected to an iPad that has an algorithm on it. And so when you sweep this camera across the room, if it perceives anything as human, it will display it as a stick figure on the screen. So because there was no human in front of that camera, we were all behind her. Theoretically, she shouldn't have seen anything on the screen. So we're standing there and we're asking questions, and I see a shadow figure run real quick and block out the lit equipment. So it ran between us and the equipment. And I said, holy shit, did anybody see that? And Miranda said, I just caught that on my SLS camera, just blipped on the SLS camera. And I said, okay, this is incredible. And then all of a sudden it ran back again the other way. And we all saw it and we actually caught it on camera. So, for us, that's extremely exciting. And it's not something that's going to cause us to run out of the door. It's going to cause us to say, okay, what is that? Do it again, because we want to see you do this again. And, I guess it's that spirit of exploration that really guides us to stay in the locations. So knock on wood, to date, we've never run out screaming.
And when you're doing these, is there some sort of emotional investment? Like, you can go into a situation maybe to unload the burden that is being held by this paranormal activity, or to maybe help the people who are asking you to come in to investigate what they think is paranormal. Not if it's at their work, maybe, but if it's somebody who's lost someone somewhere. And like, is there a gain to be had from helping these people overcome difficulty or fear or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. For us, when we do the residential locations, it very much is that first step is believing them and to try to comfort them that, yeah, we're here. We acknowledge that you have an issue that you believe is an issue, and we're going to go in and investigate for you. So we do try to really give that peace of mind that somebody believes them first and foremost. And then after we find paranormal activity, if we do in the location or the house, we give the homeowner options. You can either learn to live with it. If it hasn't harmed you, you can ask it to leave if you don't want it, if you don't want to inhabit the space with it. If it's something that is harming you or is negative, then we have a priest that we can call, or a demonologist that we'll call, to go in and investigate those locations, to do a secondary investigation to remove it. Because we don't physically remove it. None of us are demonologists. None of us are exorcists in any way. So we'll just go in and find the evidence, validate that for them, and then we have contacts that we'll call to help remove that entity if that's what the homeowner wants.
And would you, like, you've mentioned a bunch of different things. So we've got like ghosts, demons, exorcisms, which I don't know, maybe I'm just being dumb and that covers a few of the things, but would you give us a rundown of, a variety of the things that you can find and what you think those things maybe are, or what they suggest, or what they could be, and how they manifest for you to find?
Mm-hmm. Well, for us personally, what we go in, the first thing that we go in and look for are spirits. What we say is either spirits or those entities that are causing paranormal activity, i.e., shutting doors or footsteps or moving objects. So that would be something that's paranormal causing a paranormal activity. And those are the entities that we really try to communicate with. And we believe that they are former humans that, for those three reasons that I mentioned earlier, are remaining on Earth or near the veil and will communicate with us. And then there are those that I would consider demonic. I don't think a demon is something that was human. I think it's part of the good and evil that's in the world. And so for me, if somebody says, okay, I have got a demon, I would not go in with the mindset of I'm attempting to contact something that was formerly human. I think we're going to contact something that's evil. In that case, we would call a demonologist, because those people are trained by the church to deal with that type of entity, to deal with that type of energy. So those are the things that we don't seek out. And if we do encounter that for some reason, again, I'll call somebody else. And then you've got those entities that are more negative. And by that, I mean those that are that were human at some point, but were probably the worst of the worst when they were alive. So, murderers, rapists, those that don't really welcome you into their space. So for example, prisons, insane asylums, those were the places where we would find what I would consider more negative or dark energies. Something like when we went to the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, we were able to communicate with the spirit of a child. And that was very playful. It was very jovial. It was, communicating with us by rolling a glow-in-the-dark ball, and we captured his voice on voice recorder. For me, I would not consider that a dark energy. I would just think it was a boy that was stuck for some reason. So for me, like I said, I would call it, those spirits or energies are what we're trying to communicate with. The demons are a little bit different in that they were not human, and we kind of stay away from those. And then you've got the third one, which is a little bit more negative, but I would still consider them human at some point.
Are there any? Obviously, you said that you haven't had much experience with sort of the darker energies and the demon side of things, but are there any stories that you believe or that you've heard or someone you've been in contact with has told you in terms of like anything like the movies? Like, has there been a demon in a house that's kind of been tormenting people or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. And the best example that I can give you that I personally experienced was, again, Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. She's another paranormal investigator, and she has her own web series. And what she does is she'll go and investigate these locations alone, with either just by herself or with her cameraman. And so she's done various investigations, and she was doing a residential location in Tennessee, and the house was abandoned, but it was being renovated. So there wasn't anybody there, but they were occasionally doing some work on it. And so she went in and she actually did a live one night when she was setting up equipment. And it was only supposed to be about a 15-minute live. It ended up being about an hour and a half live because of the activity that's going on. In that case, the floor started to shake, things were moving. She actually had a voice on the voice recorder saying, "Miranda, I'm going to kill you." There was a lot of that going on that night on the live. And she did 3 or 4 nights of an investigation there. Again, you can watch it on her web series, which is Ghost Biker Explorations. But she actually called in a demonologist that we're both familiar with, and they actually filmed the Exorcism, and they filmed the releasing of what we consider a demonic energy there. And so you can watch that entire investigation. It's pretty fascinating. But that's the best example, the closest example of that I can give you of somebody that I'm very familiar with and what she went through.
Are you able to speak on or sort of briefly explain what an exorcism consists of?
For the one that we've experienced, and again, you can watch the one that Miranda went through. Basically, it's led by somebody who has schooling that has been not. has been schooled by the church and how to remove this negative energy. So there's a lot of praying, a lot of Catholic praying. There's holy water involved. There's sage involved. So there's just different levels depending on the level of demonic energy. I know for that house that Miranda was at, I believe the exorcism lasted about 8 to 10 hours. And so they would go to every room just saying these prayers. And I'm telling this in a very general term. There's steps involved along the way, but a lot of praying, sprinkling holy water, saging and stuff like that, and just a blessing of the house afterwards.
Wow.
It seems very serious, the whole thing. Is there any points where you're kind of doing it and you've got to a point where you just turn around and you sort of laugh at each other and think, like, not what you're doing is crazy, but it's just such a, like, bizarre world to be in?
Well, for the investigation that we've gone on, for us, it's driven by a couple of things. One, like I said, it's a chance to meet up with my sisters. So in that case, for us, pretty fun. And we go into it with that sense of exploration, as well as being in these historic places. Not many people can say they've stayed the night in the St. Augustine Lighthouse or the Villisca Ax Murder House or, West Virginia State Penitentiary, but we've done that. So that's a very cool feeling for us. In the moment, obviously, we're very serious because we do take our role in this seriously, because I feel like, for me, when you're dealing with an entity that, again, used to be human, I think that their main draw is they want to be noticed. They want to be recognized. It's like a human. All of us want acknowledgement. We don't want to go through the world alone. We want to know that somebody sees us. So we approach our investigations like that. So we are very serious in what we do. But yeah, I mean, there'll be times where, we'll laugh and, just do some different things in front of the camera and stuff. And, it is a very fun time, but for us, it's a very serious time because this is something that we're extremely passionate about.
Sure. I mean, there's always going to be a level of playfulness involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned that child, but do you get any sort of playfulness back from the supernatural, or maybe like someone who's been held who's particularly humorous that you've come into contact with?
Well, we'll go back to the Exchange Hotel, Gordonsville, Virginia. And this was a hotel that was built in the early 1800s as a stop on the railroad line. And during the Civil War, it was actually transformed into a Civil War hospital. So they had over 700 deaths just from the Civil War that are validated in that hotel/hospital during that time. And then there was other reports of a child that was killed nearby. So the paranormal claims are today that there is a child that kind of runs around the house and the hotel. His name is Jeremiah. And so the night that we were there, we really take pride in the fact that we come up with what we call unique trigger items. And basically those are things that are designed to kind of elicit a response from who we're speaking with. So in this instance, we had some glow in the dark balls. And so myself and another investigator, we were sitting at the end of a hallway, probably about 8 feet apart. And we each had a K2 meter in front of us. And this is a meter that measures electromagnetic energy. So essentially, if I'm in a location that has no power, it should not alarm. But if I were to set it next to a microwave, it will alarm. So we're sitting there and neither of these pieces of equipment are going off because there's no energy around them at all. And so I said, Jeremiah, if you're here, can you light up my meter and I'll roll the ball down to Kim? And my meter lit up. So I rolled the ball down to Kim. And so Kim said, if you're here, light up my meter and I'll roll the ball back to Kristy. So we did about 20 minutes. So for me, that was a lot of fun. And then later that night, we actually captured what I believe is the voice of Jeremiah on one of our voice recorders that was left on a bed in one of the rooms. And it said, "Hi, this is my bed." So that was kind of cool because, again, we have no children on our team. And to capture that full phrase is very compelling. So yeah, we've had a lot of different experiences like that. Again, I think it's those entities that really want to communicate with us. We were at Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia, and there was a casemate. It's an underground casemate, and it was used to hold munitions. But during the Revolutionary War, they actually converted it into a confinement cell. So it's about 6 feet underground. There's no light that comes through it at all. There's only one doorway in and out. And it's a very small room. I'd say it's only probably about 15 feet in length and maybe about 8 feet wide, all brick. And so we went in there And I had said, because we knew that a guy was held there during the Revolutionary War in solitary confinement, we took in a cigarette, some water, and some bread. And I said, did you see the things that there was only two of us in there. I said, did you see the things that we had left you? And we got a yes. All of our audio equipment caught it, a male voice saying yes. So again, to me, that was essentially his sign that he saw what we had left for him, and he acknowledged that we were doing something for him. So those are the positive experiences that we have if we can find that validation that what we're doing is actually getting a response.
It must be very frustrating for these people stuck in purgatory, as it doesn't seem like communicating with us in the, I don't want to say real world, but us in the physical world. It must be difficult for them to communicate because, you come to see this child, you set up all this stuff, and he only speaks in a room that you're not in about bed, or, I don't know if you empathize with them or informs your activity that if they are there and if they, are trying to communicate, it can't be an easy task.
No, it really isn't. From what we've experienced, I think that EVPs, what we call EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, those are the sounds and the voices that we capture on voice recorders. I think for me, those are the purest forms of paranormal activity because I think it takes the least amount of energy. So if you have very limited amount of energy, saying something or saying a hello or a hi and you're expelling the air is going to be a lot easier than manipulating something or manifesting as or a shadow. So most of what we capture is what we call EVPs. Now we have been fortunate enough, like at Brushy Mountain and at Fort Mifflin, to actually capture shadow figures that will walk through a laser grid or actually move something in some way. There's been several instances where we've had things roll on their own or move on their own. But for me, I think those are so few and far between because it just takes a lot of energy. So you're right, for something to be stuck in the afterlife or stuck here in that between that veil, if you will, it could get frustrating. But again, I go back to the fact that that's why we really acknowledge them as something, as a person, as the person they were, and just kind of give them that validation that, hey, we acknowledge you. We know you've been through what you've been through. So here's some water or a cigarette or, a glow in the dark ball to play with.
How did you sort of learn what equipment you needed, how to carry out an investigation in a way that would lead to success? Was it did it just come from a lifelong interest in the paranormal, or is there a book, is there a way to learn about it?
I think a lot of people have written books, but I haven't read any of them. For us, it's really trial and error. The first investigation, like I said, we had a couple of digital cameras, some voice recorders, and that was pretty much it. And then when you talk to different teams and you kind of realize, some things work and some things don't, we do have some electronic equipment. Like I said, we had those K2 meters. We have what's called a REM pod, and it's a different type of K2 meter. It's again designed to measure electromagnetic energy, but it also alarms. It has an audible alarm. So we've been very successful with that. There's an instrument called the Spirit Box, and basically what that is an AM/FM radio that's been modified to sweep through frequencies. So when you turn it on, you'll hear the of it going from all these different AM or FM frequencies. And the idea behind that is spirits can use that white noise to formulate words or phrases. And so we've used that to some success. And a lot of the places that we go to, there's certain things that will alarm and certain things that won't. For us, it really is trying to use all of the equipment and all of our knowledge base to get things to validate every other piece of equipment, if that makes sense. So if we were to go to a location and just have a K2 meter go off, I'd say, okay, that's interesting. And it could be paranormal. But if I've got the K2 meter going off, if I'm seeing shadow figures, if I've got things moving on the SLS camera, if I've got my REM pod going off and I'm capturing a phrase on the Spirit Box, that's building my case. That's giving me evidence to build something to say that this is unexplainable. But for us, it was a lot of trial and error. Like I said before, we're very big on our trigger items, which is something a lot of paranormal groups don't really spend a lot of time on. So we'll take the research that we've learned and really kind of tailor our trigger items to that investigation. So, for example, when we were at the West Virginia State Penitentiary, as I mentioned before, that prisoner by the name of Red Snyder, when he was in prison, he had two vices. One was cigarettes, and the other was watching the soap opera Days of Our Lives. So they would wheel the television in front of his cell every day, and he'd watch Days of Our Lives, and he did it for years. And so when we went, I actually downloaded an episode of Days of Our Lives on the laptop, and we left it to run in his cell because I knew that's what he liked, and I'm trying to find that common ground with him. So so we let it play, and we left the entire cell block. We went to another building. And so after we knew that it had stopped, we went in and everything was quiet. And we said, "Did you see the things that we left you?" And we got an audible yes. And then we had a very cool K2 session where I had two of them, and they were probably about 1.5 feet apart. So in that instance, if one is sensing electronics or some type of electricity, theoretically the other one should be as well. So, but what we were finding was we would ask it to go to the gray one and then to the black one and then to the gray one and then to the black one. And it was going back and forth like that. So to me, that's extremely compelling because otherwise they should both be going off at the same time. So I think because we use those very unique trigger items, we were able to get those unique responses because it was like hey, you acknowledged me, I'm going to acknowledge you. And so for us, we take a lot of pride in doing those things that are a little bit different. So along with our electronic equipment and our trigger items, I think that has allowed us to be extremely successful.
Nice. Are you a big movie fan when it comes to paranormal?
I'm more of the slasher fan, like Halloween, and Jason and all of that. To be honest with you, I have not watched Paranormal Activity. I've never watched that movie. I just, I live it. So, but I mean, I was watching the Halloween series when we were like 7 or 8. I'm not sure what my parents were thinking, but, I grew up on all of those. So I'm big on the slasher ones, but, and some of the psychological ones, but, it's just for me, just a fun watch.
Yeah, for sure. I can't imagine any of them get it very right.
No, and that's what I said before. There has to be that sense of sensationalism. You have to have that entertainment factor. You have to have that thing that's going to keep the audience butts in the seats. I get that. But on the flip side, it really does us a disservice because people say, well, I didn't see that in the movies. Well, this is in the movies. And, it only takes ghost hunters, 30 minutes to do their investigation. Actually, they were on set for 3 days. So you're only seeing 30 minutes of it. So when you have to explain that, it gets a little frustrating. But, I just hope that when people see our videos, they kind of get a better understanding of what a paranormal investigator actually does and how we do it.
I think that probably adds to the skepticism, doesn't it, when people see a movie and they're comparing what you do to what they saw in a movie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Somebody asked me the other day, is it like Ghostbusters? And I say, well, not so much. I say for Soul Sisters Paranormal, we do go in with the research mindset like Ghostbusters did. But after that, I mean, we're not out battling Stay Puft. It's we're actually out there doing some scientific research.
They're actually thinking about doing one at the bar I work at. The bar I work at's been going for quite a while, and it used to be a quite hardcore punk venue. And one of the people who'd worked there for a very long time died behind the bar. He was going in there to clean up after a night out. And I think he was unwell, and they were like, you shouldn't do that, but he loved the place. So he was going in to do his usual cleanup. And he just dropped dead behind the bar, and then now it has new owners. This was maybe like 10, 15 years ago. Has new owners, and a few of the people who work there, the owner and some of the people who work there, full on believe that they've been experiencing things, and there's been things caught on the camera. And the UK TV show was going to get involved. What's the one in the UK called? I don't know, but that sort of sensational TV show is going to get involved. But they are going to do, a stakeout for the night and bring all the equipment and see how it goes. But obviously with the current climate, that's not happening.
Well, then you should get a jump on it and do one yourself. Get some voice recorders and go in there and ask some questions.
Well, actually, we have quite a lot of voice recorders. Is it just a standard voice recorder that you use? Just a
Yeah, just a little Sony digital voice recorder. I would just go in and set it on the bar one night when nobody's really there and just start asking some questions, see if you get anything.
I do have one in this room, actually. And I think a couple of the people I've met obviously knew the guy who was big on the scene, so maybe I should. And if you ever come over to Manchester in England, you give us a call. We'll do a stakeout together.
Absolutely. I would love to. You guys are totally invited. And if you ever come to the States, we'll take you on an investigation so you can really see what it's like.
Oh, yeah? So you must be traveling all around the country to visit these places.
We have, and we do it all when everybody else gets to fly in. I'm kind of protective of our equipment, so I'm not trusting it to the airlines. So I actually drive everywhere. So I've logged a lot of miles over the years. But and like I said, we just get to see a lot of the country that most of the population of the U.S. just doesn't get to see, or just haven't had the opportunity to see. And that to us is just so extremely compelling. But yeah, we drive everywhere. We've gone. I'm in Florida, and our longest drive so far has been 23 hours out to Iowa, and then we went up to Massachusetts to the Lizzie Borden house, which was a lot of fun. And we stop at different places along the way, like little towns that have a legend or lore or something, and try to do an impromptu investigation there. We've been to Gettysburg a few times, and so these locations that we've gone to have just been really historic, and we've just been very fortunate that we've had the opportunity to visit them.
Yeah, it's great. It really feels like the tack you've taken is fulfilling, and you're getting deep in the history, you're seeing the places, you're visiting these things. It must be quite a lifestyle to live in many other ways other than the paranormal that I think a lot of people, even skeptics, must at least admire and aspire to live a life where you can experience so much culture, as well as the paranormal culture.
Right, just brings it all together. No, you're absolutely right, and it really does, because when you see things like Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or the St. Augustine Lighthouse or the Villisca Ax Murder House, and you see them on shows or read about them in books, but then you roll onto these places and it's like completely different. I mean, it just looks one way in pictures, but it's a completely different mindset when you're there and you're inside of it. And, for the Lizzie Borden house, we're walking on the floors that Lizzie Borden walked on, and, that where the blood was spilled, we're touching the same doorknobs that they had in 1892. So for us, it is a very real, it's a very tactile way to experience history, and it's something that a lot of people don't do nowadays, and it's just it's unfortunate, but for us it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm interested to close this off, you could tell us one of the stories behind one of the locations that you visited, maybe the Axe Murder House. But what was the story behind that? What happened?
Well, the Villisca Ax Murder House, that's out in Iowa, Villisca, Iowa, and it's a very remote farm community. And so in 1912, there was a family that lived in this house, and the Moore family, and it was the husband and wife, the mom and dad, and they had 4 kids, and then there were 2 kids staying over on this night in 1912. And what they theorized happened was they went off to a church function, and when they came home, there was somebody in the attic waiting for them. And so during the night, that perpetrator walked down with an axe and bludgeoned all of them to death. Each of them had at least 15 to 20 hatchet marks in each of their faces. So after that happened, the perpetrator slipped out under cover of darkness, and it's still an unsolved murder. So when we went there, like I said, we used some of those trigger items, and we caught some very cool EVPs that night. And it was just, like I said, a very interesting experience, because, you think on how this murder could have happened, and, why didn't they hear this guy come out of the attic, and why didn't they hear him go down the stairs? And, when you hear that on television, you have these questions, but when you're there in the moment, you realize, well, it was only a quarter of a mile from the train tracks. So when the trains went by the night we were there, we couldn't even hear each other talk. And that's how loud it was inside the house. And so when you start factoring those things in, and you start imagining in your mind how this could have happened, well, it could have happened really easily. And obviously it did. And So experiencing something like that, the Lizzie Borden house, again, that was a scene of an axe murder. And that happened in 1892, where they believed Lizzie Borden, she got arrested. This daughter, Lizzie Borden, murdered her stepmother and her father by bludgeoning them with an axe. And she was actually arrested but acquitted in 1893. But again, you see that house and you know the story behind it, but you see the house and you're like, okay, I can understand how these facts work now because I'm in it. And, you know, for us, unraveling some of those things just in our own minds is a very cool experience.
And how can people find your team or some of the output that you've put out?
Well, our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com, and everything about us is on the website, as well as all of the videos that we've put together. They're all there. We have a YouTube channel under Soul Sisters Paranormal, so everything that we put out, I think I have like 50 or 60 videos on there, just not only the investigation videos, but also what we call quick clips. So you can just, if you don't want to watch the full investigation video, you can just watch these 1-minute clips of the things we found. And then under Facebook at Soul Sisters Paranormal. And we're very active on Facebook. So if anybody wants to ask any questions or message us, we're pretty quick to respond on Facebook. So those are the main methods of contacting us.
Oh, fantastic.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's been really, really interesting. I love this. I love ghost stories and old murder stories and unsolved mysteries and all that sort of stuff. So it's been great.
Well, thank you both for having me. I really appreciate the conversation.